Have they found a miracle cure for autism? Recently, a study was published following a pair of twin girls about 2 years old who had a level of autism that required, quote, very substantial support. In the study, they put them on a program that included behavioral analysis, speech therapy, supplementation, and a very specific diet. After a year and a half, one of the girls had a reversal of symptoms so drastic that she was indistinguishable from children who had never had a history of autism symptoms. Indistinguishable. And the other girl, who had more severe autism, improved drastically, but not quite as much. This is an astonishing result, and in this video, I'm going to cover the exact dietary changes and supplementation according to the research paper, as I believe everyone could benefit from this kind of diet, not just the children with autistic symptoms. Yes, the girls did also do behavioral and speech therapy, which likely contributed to their results. However, I'm just going to cover diet in detail. And I'm not saying autism is bad or making comment or judgments towards anyone who has it. The parents are very loving. They're not trying to fix their children. They were trying to help reduce symptoms that were creating substantial challenges and difficulty, requiring a lot of support for both the twins. Their intention to help their children thrive and flourish as much as possible. I personally really care about this because I'm pregnant right now and I'm currently thinking about the health of my future child. I'm going to go through the diet step by step, starting with gluten-free and casein-free. So they strictly removed all sources of gluten and casein from their diets. Let's take a look why. Many people with autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, have increased gastrointestinal issues. One theory examined is that these often undiagnosed gastric conditions and food intolerances may provoke certain behaviors and inattention in tasks due to undiagnosed pain. So by removing inflammatory irritants, behavioral changes may occur. It is also thought that the enzyme needed to digest gluten and casein is not made by the human gut bacteria, where scientists in Australia study the bacteria in stools in children who were on the autism spectrum. They found a correlation where those who did have autism actually didn't have the gut bacteria required to break down casein and gluten, causing an intolerance and potentially affecting their symptoms. Food intolerances cause inflammation. Inflammation causes negative symptoms and disease. But what about the rest of us? According to Tom O'Brien, a world-renowned expert in the field of gluten-related disorders, he estimates between 30 and 60% of the population have undiagnosed issues with gluten, and that can contribute to things like arthritis, inflammation, and pretty much exacerbate all kinds of disease. So you may have an undiagnosed gluten allergy or intolerance that you didn't know about. Gluten is a protein most commonly found in breads and pastas, and casein is a protein found in milk and dairy products. So things that most of us would consume in our day-to-day lives. Gluten-free and dairy-free options have increased as the amount of intolerance and allergy has also increased over the years. One of the main drivers to go gluten-free is celiac disease. For those with celiac disease, gluten is highly inflammatory and tears the gut mucosal lining, causing digestive issues, decreased nutrient absorption, and further issues in the body. That mechanism is thought to be pretty much the same for everyone. Plants are very easily genetically modified, whereas our digestive systems are not easy to adapt. It is theorized that gluten of today is just too hard for everyone's digestive system to break it down and process it. Think of gluten as these tiny little protein men, all armed and ready to battle your digestive system. Previously, your system was strong and robust, with the enzymes required to defeat gluten easily. However, now gluten has adapted and gotten an armor upgrade. Now, it's too strong and your body and digestive system can't beat it, so the gluten saps up the nutrients and wreaks havoc on your body, especially the more of it you consume. The protein and gluten in grains today looks very different to what it looked like many years ago, with our digestive systems not having evolved to being able to break it down. Therefore, where we once were able to consume gluten with no problem, now we're not. Hence, we're seeing so many more gluten intolerances emerging. And similarly with casein, it has also been shown to be inflammatory in nature and really hard to digest. Hence, gluten-free and dairy-free diets. Research does show that gluten actually increases systemic inflammation when it's ingested. In fact, your bodies can create antibodies to gluten, which can fire up and inflame your brain. Gluten also decreases good bacteria in the gut, which is associated with an increased likelihood of feeling anxious, stressed, or depressed. Some clinical studies have looked into the benefit of regular people who aren't celiac not consuming gluten. And these studies have found benefits claiming it improves overall health, improved gut health, and improve performance. The research is somewhat limited though. So when it comes to avoiding it, it's a lot easier these days with pretty much everything being labeled whether it contains gluten or not, thanks to the celiac community. So by reading labels, you can pretty much work out what to consume and what to avoid. And the same goes with casein. It would just require pretty much avoiding all dairy. Okay, let's take a look at the next diet thing that the girls did. They went on an anti-inflammatory diet. A meta-analysis found that there was a higher level of inflammation in those with autism than those without. Children with ASD are more likely to have gastrointestinal symptoms than typically developed children. Another study found that mothers who had high levels of inflammation during pregnancy were more likely to have children with autism. All of this suggests that a reduction of inflammation may benefit and cause a reduction of symptoms. Pretty much as the name sounds, it is removing all inflammatory foods with the goal of reducing total body inflammation. And as I've already mentioned, excessive inflammation causes problems for everyone and is linked to disease. Acute inflammation or short-term inflammation is actually beneficial for healing and regeneration. However, chronic or long-term inflammation is really nasty. That's the bad one, and is linked to diseases such as heart disease, diabetes, cancer, arthritis, neurological disorders. The list goes on. Chronic inflammation, disease, they go hand in hand. So this is where an anti-inflammatory diet can be beneficial for all people, not just those with autism. The average American highly processed diet is very inflammatory, so it will only have increased benefit to shift away from that and move towards anti-inflammatory foods. So what would that look like, and what types of foods can you actually eat on an anti-inflammatory diet? So you can eat fruits, veggies, healthy, well-sourced proteins including grass-fed meats and wild-caught fish, and healthy fats from foods like avocado, olive oil, and coconut oil, as well as those found in well-sourced meats and fish. However, you can find anti-inflammatory diet inclusions and exclusions online in excruciating detail. Let's take a look at inflammatory foods to avoid. Starting with seed and vegetable oils. They are very chemically processed, rancid, and toxic. We also want to avoid processed meat. A lot of these meats are cured and processed in chemicals and inflammatory things. We also want to avoid commercially baked goods. If you are baking them at home, they will be slightly better because you won't have a lot of the crap that's in it. It will still have sugar though, and sugar is inflammatory. You also want to avoid breads and pastas made from whole white flour. Again, they also contain additives when bought from a store. We also want to avoid deep fried items such as French fries, fried chicken, donuts, foods high in added sugar. Be mindful, most things that you find on a shelf have some kind of added sugar. Some of these just aren't easy to spot because it doesn't actually say sugar. So when you look at a label, your eyes glaze over and you go, not a lot of sugar. It actually might be hidden, and it might be a really bad processed form of sugar. And again, we also want to avoid sugar sweetened beverages. So this is the basics of an anti-inflammatory diet, and the easiest thing really to do is to just cut out processed and packaged foods. Naturally, you'll see a drop in inflammation. Another aspect of diet that affects inflammation in the body is the ratio between omega-3 and omega-6. Two very important things we need to be consuming. However, an ideal ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 is 1:1 or a 1:4 at the max. It's not uncommon for the ratio to get to 1:10 omega-3 to omega-6 or above that in today's really poor diet. When the ideal ratio is 1:1 and you're seeing normally a 1:10 ratio, no wonder there are problems. An imbalance in this ratio can cause inflammation, which again is what we're talking about and what we don't want. Omega-6 tends to be more inflammatory, whereas omega-3s have anti-inflammatory properties and balance out those omega-6s. Hence, we need to have them balanced in a good ratio. So when talking about diet more specifically, we can address an imbalance between omega-3s and omega-6s by knowing where to find both of them. So omega-3s are found in foods including salmon, mackerel, anchovies, oysters, flax seeds, and eggs, and supplemental fish oil or krill oils, or just omega-3 supplements. Whereas omega-6s, they're found in vegetable and seed oils, nuts and seeds, processed and packaged foods, chicken, pork, and eggs, tofu, and tempeh. Everywhere we look, there are omega-6s. You have to go digging to find the omega-3s. And the anti-inflammatory diet just lines up with this. Let's take a look at the next dietary thing the twins did. They had low sugar and no artificial additives. So they completely avoided sugar, artificial colors, dyes, and ultra-processed foods. Now, where this seems pretty straightforward as to why we would avoid these things, not only are sugars and ultra-processed foods inflammatory, they're very addictive and affect neurochemistry, aka your brain. Research shows that people with ASD have poor sugar metabolism, similar to to that of people with type 2 diabetes. Also, research found that avoiding sugar and refined carbohydrates and increasing the consumption of lean proteins can dramatically improve concentration and judgment and decrease impulsiveness in those with ASD. Not only has it been found that sugar and carbohydrates do affect those with ASD, removing them also improves brain and behavioral function. But let's take it a step further. It also affects all of our brains. Sugar has been shown to decrease brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. It's a brain protein that plays a significant role in memory, learning, and behavior. So basically, sugar negatively affects our brain and our ability to learn and remember. That's everyone. So when put that way, sugar is actually really toxic for your brain. Sugar also increases your risk of heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. Ugh. Sugar can also lead to non-alcohol-induced fatty liver disease. Alcohol isn't the only thing that can cause severe liver issues. There is an argument to say sugar can actually be worse because we don't think it's as bad and we consume a lot more of it. Sugar's negative effects don't just stop there. It can also increase cellular aging, depression, and fatigue. Just to list a few more. No one wants aging. Consuming sugar will age you, so keep that in mind with sugar consumption. The amount of sugar that we consume in our diets on average is astronomical and well and truly above what's deemed healthy. A 2019 study suggests that the spike in autism may be connected to the preservatives found in processed foods. That's alarming, but again, it's not surprising. Ultra-processed foods, outside of being filled with sugars, are also filled with chemicals, preservatives, inflammatory seed oils, and lots of nasties that mess up our health. So it makes sense that everyone should avoid them, not just those with autism. Avoiding highly processed foods looks like most packaged foods and all fast food. The best case and easiest way of doing this is cooking everything and baking everything at home yourself. Sometimes it's really not that practical, so reading the labels and food packages, looking at what ingredients are listed and what the sugar content is and where the sugar comes from is going to be worthwhile if you can't just completely avoid the packaged foods themselves. Natural sugars from fruit are a much better option than processed sugars like high fructose corn syrup. Natural fruit sugars don't spike insulin as high with the presence of their fiber if you're eating it in the fruit. So let's quickly take a look at artificial colors because it's very interesting. A meta-analysis in 2020 outlined that food colors can trigger many behavioral issues in most kids, specifically hyperactivity. So you know how people say red lollies cause kids to be hyperactive? It's true. It's the coloring in them. It is shown in research. Artificial food coloring also usually contains petroleum and is manufactured in a chemical process that includes formaldehyde, hydroxides, and furic acids. They're toxic. And most impurities in food colors, sometimes including lead, arsenic, and mercury. Lead, arsenic, and mercury. So where you think you're eating an innocent, sweet little colored lolly or blue Powerade, it might contain lead, arsenic, or mercury. That's kind of crazy and really, really bad. Let me continue with this. A review found that all of the 9 currently US approved dyes raise health concerns of all sorts of degrees. 3 dyes have been found to be contaminated with a few carcinogens, and at least 4 dyes cause hypersensitivity reactions. So I don't know why they are still approved and on the shelves and in our food that we are currently eating. Again, regardless of who, artificial colorings are really bad and should be avoided by everyone. Anything to be a known carcinogen is a no-go and should be avoided. You can get natural sources of coloring for your home baking in the forms of things like freeze-dried powdered berries. Yes, it is a little bit more effort though. However, carcinogens. Let's take a look at the next part of the dietary protocol that these twins were on. They consumed organic and fresh foods, home-cooked foods that were locally sourced. There is strong data that shows an increased usage of glyphosate, a herbicide sprayed on plants, with an increased autism rate. Who would have thought that the food you eat could have a correlation with autism? Corn and soy in the US are genetically modified to be glyphosate resistant so they can be sprayed with it. Animal toxicity studies with certain genetically modified foods have also shown that there may be a toxic effect to several organs and systems in the body. And the results of most studies with genetically modified foods indicate that they may cause common toxic effects such as pancreas, renal, or reproductive dysfunctions. Some studies just suggest that GMOs are just less nutritious, where some make a connection with organ damage and cancer. All that to say, genetically modified foods do carry health concerns. However, the research is limited and isn't strong enough, stopping the availability of them on the shelves. So it is very likely that you go down to the shop and anything that you get may be genetically modified or sprayed with some kind of herbicide. That's where organic foods do come into play. They are deemed healthier and have higher levels of nutrients due to higher quality water and soil. They promote better quality natural farming and are better for the environment and don't contain GMOs, pesticides, herbicides, hormones, or antibiotics. So yes, organic is just a better choice of food. So when it comes to organic, do we need to eat everything organic? There are some foods that you're better off focusing on those ones. You can find 2 lists, the Dirty Dozen. These are the fruits and veg you want to make sure that you're getting organic if you're gonna go organic. Now, the next list that they have is the Clean 15, and these don't matter as much whether you get them organic or not organic. So if you're not gonna go totally organic, but you wanna go some kind of organic, these are the ones not to worry about and just get conventionally. Okay, let's move on to the last major dietary change. The girls also took supplements. The first being omega-3s, we already touched on with the anti-inflammatory diet as they reduce inflammation, and we looked at that benefit. However, they also lower inflammation in the brain, impacting neurotransmitters, mood, sleep, attention, and aggression, which correlates with autism, and research confirms that omega-3s are effective for children with ASD. Also, an omega-3 and vitamin D combination of supplements had good combined effects on those with autism, with significant improvements in social and behavioral outcomes. So not only is omega-3 beneficial on its own, but combined with vitamin D, we do see a really positive effect. And vitamin D is another supplement that the girls were on. Vitamin D is required for everyone, yet is one of the most prevalent deficiencies worldwide. In the US alone, 42% of adults are deficient, while 50% of children between 1 and 5 are also deficient. That is a lot of deficiency in something so important. One of the main roles vitamin D plays is regulating calcium absorption, but it's also good for immune health, brain function, and regulating inflammation and the nervous system. There is research correlating vitamin D deficiency with increased severity of viral and respiratory infections. So just by having enough vitamin D in your diet, you could be better off when it comes to illness severity or sickness. So if you catch a cold, it might not be that bad. If you get the flu, you're less likely to have it progress into pneumonia, or you may not even get it to begin with. Vitamin D also plays a role in many other reactions and processes in the body. So via chain reaction, you could find that your overall health improves significantly just by correcting your vitamin D deficiency. The best way to get vitamin D is from the sun. However, if that's not an option, supplementation is the next best thing. The girls were also taking 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. In English, that's just active folate or vitamin B9. Basically an easily absorbed folate, not folic acid. Active folate is readily absorbed in the intestines and can be used directly by the body without the need for conversion, making it a more bioavailable form than folic acid, especially for those with a gene mutation abbreviated MTHFR, which is estimated to affect 40% of the global population, which is huge. Now, what this mutation does is it causes people to not be able to break down folic acid into folate that the body can actually use, and it inhibits the body from absorbing folate. Now, folic acid is important for preventing neural tube defects, supporting cognitive function, supporting mental health and mood disorders, and DNA synthesis and repair. Research suggests that adequate maternal folate levels during pregnancy, achieved through diet or supplementation, may reduce the risk of a child having ASD or autism. Research also suggests that supplementing folate in ASD diagnosed children have led to improvements in neurological and behavioral symptoms. So it's definitely worthwhile supplementing for those girls, and it totally makes sense why they were put on the activated folate supplement. The girls also supplemented with a multivitamin and carnitine and homeopathic remedies tailored to each girl's specific needs. Nutritional deficiency is linked to disease. Supplementation can be a great way to fix these issues. Many of the supplements that they were taking are actually beneficial for everyone. However, it is important to tailor supplementation to your specific needs. Otherwise, it can be a waste of money and could potentially cause more harm than good. I have a video on supplement mistakes you may be making, so go check that out if you want more information on supplementation. This diet was so specific to those twin girls. However, it's so interesting that pretty much everything they did does have a wider benefit to the general population and could improve a lot of health across the board. It is really cool to see such an incredible result these girls achieved with the protocol they followed. I hope you found this info helpful. If you like this video, subscribe. Check out this video right here where I talk about 9 weight loss mistakes you may be making. I did a lot of research for how you may be able to improve weight loss. Even if you're not looking at losing weight, a lot of the info in this video actually can be really, really helpful, and I found it helpful for myself. Go watch this video and I will see you in the next one.